Ms. Turner, I want to be sure I understand your testimony. You think prison labor should be voluntary? Is that the ACLU position?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think, well, do you?
I'm sorry, my microphone was off, if I may answer on my,
Yes, ma'am. Did you answer yes?
My answer is that the majority of incarcerated workers wish to work, but it is vital that that work be truly voluntary and that there is no place for forced labor in the United States. Yes.
Okay. And you think that prisoners who do work are underpaid? Is that the ACLU position?
They are underpaid or unpaid. In your state, many of those workers are unpaid.
Okay. Let's take a maintenance worker, which I assume includes people working in the kitchen. What do you think the starting pay ought to be in my state for a prisoner?
Workers should be paid the minimum wage of the state where they live. And there are true fiscal arguments in favor
minimum wage? Is that
minimum wage, yes.
Do you think prisoners should have a 401k?
I think that, my opinion is not what we're asking about. I'm here to provide information and context for the committee.
Do you think prisoners should be provided with a 401k?
If I may answer, the reality is that if we paid incarcerated workers a minimum wage, it would have net fiscal benefits for
yes,
the United
I'm
States.
trying to ask you
workers would be able to pay.
About benefits.
Yes.
Do you think they should be provided with a 401k?
Workers should be eligible to earn into the social safety net. If they're paid minimum wage, workers will be able to earn into Social Security benefits to support themselves.
No?
That does not include a 401k,
Okay.
but I'm talking about basic social safety net.
Do you think prisoners should be entitled to paid vacation?
Workers should be entitled to workers' compensation when they're injured or maimed on the job, which happens all too often.
So they should be covered under our workers' comp law?
Yes, absolutely. Workers are working in dangerous conditions.
Should prisoners be allowed to unionize?
Yes.
You believe that too? Okay.
It's vital that workers
should prisoners be provided with health insurance, matched by their employer?
Workers should be covered by workplace health and safety guarantees. Incarcerated
yes, but
people.
What about health insurance?
Incarcerated people are already guaranteed a basic standard of health care. That is already guaranteed by U.S. law.
Health insurance.
They're already guaranteed that, even though the medical care they receive is usually substandard, and when they're injured on the job, often receive substandard care. They are already guaranteed by law basic health care protections while incarcerated.
Mr. Wynn, what crime did you commit?
Second-degree murder and attempted second-degree murder.
Okay. Who did you murder?
Jeffrey Owens.
Jeffrey Owen?
Yes, sir.
Why did you murder him?
I was a 16-year-old kid. Jeffrey, me and DeWan had a confrontation, and Jeffrey was an innocent bystander.
Okay. So you shot Jeffrey by accident?
Yes, sir.
You intended to murder somebody else?
I was defending myself against DeWan Lewis.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, you shot at Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
And you missed?
Yes, sir.
And you hit Mr. what was his name?
Mr. Jeffrey Owens.
Mr. Owens?
Yes, sir.
Did Mr. Owens have a mother?
I think everybody born in the world has a mother.
Yeah. But was his mother alive when
Yes.
you killed him?
She's still alive.
Okay. Did Mr. Owens have a father?
Yes,
Who was
sir.
alive when you killed him?
I don't know about his father's.
You never checked?
I mean, as a prisoner in Louisiana, you cannot check on those
Did
type of things.
Mr. Owens have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, he did.
Okay. How many?
I don't know.
Okay. You mentioned that your mother cried when you were sent to Angola. Do you know how Mr. Owens' mother felt? Have you ever reached out to them?
May I ask you a question, Senator?
Well, answer mine first.
I would answer yours.
Okay.
And you asking me questions that an incarcerated person cannot answer. I don't know what Jeffrey Owens' mother did, but human anatomy tells me that, yes, his mother had to cry because she lost a son that she brought into the world. Okay. Yes, his father, if he was living, he should have cried. His brother cried.
Did you ever reach out to Mr. Owen's family?
Sir, you're a senator from Louisiana. If a person like me that was incarcerated reach out to any person that's a victim, that's a sentence. You go to prison for that. And I was already in prison, so that's a different sentence.
So you couldn't
No,
write?
by law, you cannot reach out to the victim or the victim's family.
Well, I will tell you, I came today because I thought we were going to have and I hope we were going to have a rational discussion based on empirical evidence on a very complex, nuanced subject. Frankly, I'm disappointed. You know, Ms. Turner, Professor, I just don't think these emotional arguments are at all productive in us trying to solve a problem. People are in prison for a reason. I believe in free will. I get the impression that the ACLU position and the professor's position, I don't know about Mr. Wynn's position, is that you feel sorry for these folks who are in prison. I wish they weren't there too, but they're there for a reason that really hurt somebody. In Mr. Wynn's case, he murdered somebody. He actually killed somebody by accident. He meant to kill this person and he shot this other person. He could have killed two. And I'm kind of disappointed. And I just don't think we're going to solve this problem with emotional arguments from people who don't believe in free will and responsibility. That's just my point of view. But I thank you all for being here. And I'll say this, Professor, I was struck, Professor Armstrong, you keep talking about coercive context, that the prisoners are working in a coercive context. It's prison. Prison is a coercive context. And people are there for a reason. And I think you're in la-la land if you don't recognize that. Sure, you can respond.
Thank you so much. So I think the point is, in fact, that it is prison, but it is when prison is combined with being forced to work in certain environments that it can lead to dangerous conditions. And so I think about...
You have no empirical evidence of that.
Actually, I think that I do. Another life of mine is...
We can all cherry pick. I mean, people who work get hurt sometimes,
yes.
Whether you're in prison or you're out.
Yeah.
Okay?
So I agree. What I'm talking about, and I think is really important to remember, is that our incredible system of justice will sentence somebody to a certain number of years. But what they're not sentenced to is to lose a limb or to lose a finger, because they're working on defective equipment that isn't subject to the same rules, simply the location of a printing press, whether it's behind the wall or something that is out in the free world. Its location should not determine to what extent it is a regulated piece of equipment.
And you make a valid point, but I've read some of your writings and some of your work, and I just get the impression that you almost think we shouldn't have prisons. That there is no free will. That people don't choose to commit crimes, and then if they do, they shouldn't be held responsible for them. And I just don't think you're entitled to that opinion. It's America.
I don't think I've written that anywhere.
To teach your kids that, but I just don't think I don't think most fair-minded Americans agree with you. And that's just my opinion. I'm happy to have this discussion, and I thank my friend Senator Booker for calling it. But you all seem to forget the fact that we're talking about prison, folks. And people are in prison for a reason. And they're there. No, ma'am, Ms. Turner, I'm going to have my say. I understand the ACLU position. I'm glad you're not in charge, because we'd have a lot more people hurt in this country. Thank you. Judge Dixon, can you tell me about the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution?
It's me, Senator Kennedy, Judge
Oh,
Valenzuela.
I'm sorry, I can't see that far.
Okay.
I just got new glasses. Judge down here, and then we'll come this way.
Judge Court, Senator, I had the same issue when I walked into the room. I thought that it would be difficult to see my last name, so no need to apologize.
Okay.
So, and I apologize. Your question is the full faith and credit
clause. Yes, ma'am.
clause of the Constitution. It requires that the states give full faith and credit to judgments of other states.
Okay, very good. Judge Netburn, I was looking at your resume. You went to Brown University, is that right?
I did.
And then you went to law school in California,
That's correct.
and you've worked for the Brennan Center.
I interned. I was a law student
Justice,
intern.
Okay. And you worked for the Center for Reproductive Law and Policy?
I was a law student intern there for 8 weeks during my 1L summer.
Okay. And you are a political activist, aren't you?
I am not. I'm a sitting United States magistrate judge.
Okay, all right. Do you remember an inmate named William McLean, also known as July Justine Shelby?
Yes, I know who you're referring to.
Okay. Mr. McLean raped a child, didn't he?
30 years ago, the petitioner in the habeas case before me,
Did he rape a child?
he pled guilty to that crime. Yes, it's abhorrent.
And then he raped a 17, he raped a little boy, right?
I believe that's correct. I believe he pled guilty to
And
two
then
acts of sexual violence.
And then he raped a 17-year-old girl, right?
Again, this case was handled by the state court in Indiana, but I
I'm
believe
just asking you the facts.
I
Don't-
believe-
Don't stall on me now. Did he rape a 17-year-old girl or not after raping a 9-year-old boy?
I believe that's what he pled guilty to.
Okay, and then he went to prison, didn't he?
Yes, the petitioner was.
And then he came out and he sent child porn, basically adults raping little children, to another sex offender. And he was sent back to prison, right?
The petitioner pled guilty to
Was
one.
he sent back to prison?
Well, that case was in the federal system, so.
Was he sent back to prison?
Yes, this time to
Okay.
federal prison.
Thank you. And then he decided to transition, and he became a female and started going by July Justine Shelby. Is that right?
Yes.
And Ms. Shelby said, I don't want to go to a male prison. I want to go to a female prison. And the Board of Prisons said, what planet did you parachute in from? You're going to a male prison with this kind of record. And you sent him to a female prison, didn't you? You said that the Board of Prisons was trying to violate Ms. Shelby, former Mr. McLean's constitutional rights, didn't you?
I issued a report and recommendation to the district judge recommending that the district judge transfer the petitioner to a women's facility. The district judge adopted that
You said the Board of
recommendation.
Prisons was trying to violate Ms. Shelby's, Mr. McLean's constitutional rights, didn't you?
So I based my decision on the facts that were presented to me in the record
But
evidence.
it wasn't that your ruling?
I recommended finding that under Estelle versus Gamble.
Why won't you admit that was your ruling? Are you ashamed of it today?
I'm not. I'm answering the question. I applied Estelle versus
But
Gamble.
was that your ruling?
My recommendation was that the petitioner's serious medical needs were being denied by keeping her in a men's facility.
A violation of the Eighth Amendment, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And how big was Ms. Shelby, Mr. McLean?
I don't have a specific recollection. Your colleague just suggested that she was
6'2"?
more than 6 feet tall.
And you told the Board of Prisons, well, she'll be okay. The other women in the female prison will be okay because it's only hypothetical that Ms. Shelby, Mr. McLean would reoffend again after he's already raped a 9-year-old boy and a 17-year-old girl and has been sending child porn through the mail. You said there's no chance he'll reoffend again. Did you say that?
Senator Kennedy, I based my decision on the record.
But am I
evidence.
right? Did you conclude that?
I don't have a specific recollection of that. I did recommend that after finding a constitutional violation.
What were you thinking in saying there's no, it's only hypothetical that she would reoffend?
The facts of the case were that the petitioner had last engaged in a contact offense 30 years ago. The petitioner had not engaged in any contact offense. In addition, the medical evidence made clear that for the last 5 years, the petitioner was sober and hormonally entirely a female, and there was no evidence.
The Board of Prisons didn't agree with you. I'm not going to run out of time here. You're really a political activist, aren't you?
I am not, sir.
But your record demonstrates otherwise.
I disagree. I apply the law to the facts and come to a fair decision. All of my decisions that have been appealed, particularly this one, the district judge adopted my report and recommendation in full, and the government did not move for a stay of the decision.
Well, Judge Netburn, I want to continue on this line of questioning. In your court, what matters more, the rights of individuals or your political ideology?
I apply the law to the facts.
I asked a question, which matters more?
Well, my political ideology doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so I don't believe you. And I think this case demonstrates that you are willing to subjugate the rights of individuals to satisfy your political ideology. This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy. Was he guilty of that?
Yes, the petitioner pled guilty to that.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
And also criminal deviant conduct, which the record doesn't disclose what that was exactly. Then, after serving in prison, Mr. McClain was released for parole, but then violated the terms of parole by having internet and was sent back to prison. 1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
I'm unclear on exactly the time frame that you're at, but the petitioner was convicted of distributing child pornography.
Child pornography that was images of adults violently raping children.
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay.
For which there are real victims.
And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago you said that when this man decided that he was a she, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
I think what I said, or at least what
that is a verbatim quote, entirely a female.
Sorry, what I meant to say was hormonally a female.
Okay, but that's not entirely. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, you know, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're
yes,
asking me?
The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me, and I reached a decision based on what the law
I asked
is.
you a question. Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so. And in fact, I'm going to give some quotes from your order because Senator Kennedy is right. This is not a judge's order. This is a political activist. By the way, the beginning of your order says, at birth, people are typically assigned a gender. I got to say that would astonish a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans think you go to the hospital, a baby is born, and congratulations, you have a little boy, a little girl. the assigned to gender, I know you went to Brown, but it sounds like it's in a college faculty lounge with no bearing on reality. The Bureau of Prison argued what I'm saying right now, that if you put this person in a female prison, there will be a risk of sexual assault to the women. And you know what you did? You said you didn't care about the women. I'm going to quote what you wrote. You wrote, quote, "The Bureau of Prisons claim penological interest in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. This interest is legitimate," that's kind of you to say, "but there are no signs that petitioner is at risk of reoffending. The record is devoid of evidence of incidents of violence or assault during petitioner's incarceration when she was the perpetrator, only the victim. A theoretical risk of sexual assault by the prisoner without more cannot support the BOP's position. No evidence, theoretical." Have you dealt, in what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at a risk of reoffending?
Senator, as I do in every case.
Okay, I know you've been told to repeat the line, "I follow the law." I asked a question. In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at risk of reoffending?
Sir, I looked at the facts that were before me in this case. All of the evidence, including the statements of every warden who had supervised this petitioner.
You also wrote, "The BOP also posits that permitting petitioner to live among women will be traumatizing and possibly dangerous to them. This concern is overblown." I have to say, if I were the father of one of those women, and you decided that my daughter's cellmate was going to be a 6'2" man who over and over and over again committed violent sexual assault, I would say the entire justice system is absurd, and it is clear on your record your political ideology matters a heck of a lot more than the rights of those women that you endangered. I think you're a radical, and I think you have no business being a judge.